We just can never quit on each other. We can readjust, we can reassess, we can reset, but we can never, ever quit. That is not in our language. We don't even talk about that. If you want something, you have to be obsessed with it. My greatest strength is I will hang on longer than anyone else, and I just will never stop. I always say this, the one thing I can promise is it's going to be tough. There's going to be days where this isn't working and it's going to be ugly. How we succeed is getting through those days. Success isn't linear. There's going to be very dark days, and we've got to sit down with one another, hug it out and talk it out and make sure that this works.
Welcome to another episode of the Deal Flow Show podcast. Today, we have Kevin Ramsier. Kevin Ramsier, managing partner at Sier Capital Partners. Kevin, if you give us a quick 2 minutes of who it is that you are, what it is that you do, and who it is that you help.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me on. I appreciate it. Sier Capital is a firm that I started 20 some years ago after exiting a handful of businesses that I had gotten into. And we find businesses in transition that are already at between 3 to 10 million of EBITDA. I call it very lower middle market, and we help institutionalize those businesses and get them really institutionally ready for like more larger private equity firms or a strategic to come in and take them over. And I would call us a little bit of a hybrid family office. We don't have a fund. We do deal by deal. So we'll do a couple transactions a year. And then our existing portfolio companies will roll up our sleeves and assist them with add-on acquisitions, because that's part of our overall growth strategy is to do add-ons along with some organic growth. But we're a small team. I have an office in New York, in Charlotte, and I am in Charlotte, and our partners are in New York. So that's us. Hopefully that helped. It was a good intro.
Yeah, Sier, for sure. Sier Capital with Kevin, you said you exited a few companies before you started it, correct?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my background, how that happened.
Yeah, I would love it.
So I grew up kind of poor in outside of Akron, Ohio, and my mom raised me by herself. And if you wanted football cleats or something, you had to go figure it out. So I started mowing yards as a kid, and by the time I was 18, we had a pretty good business. And my mom's alive. I still tell her to this day, if you wouldn't have made me go to college, I'd have the largest landscaping business in the country right now. And they're selling for pretty good multiples. But she had this vision for me, like go to college, go get a job, get out of the situation that we were in. And I kind of followed that path and went to school, graduated, ended up working at a firm at Invesco. I was there for 10 years, became a partner there, and raised capital for their funds. And after 10 years, I think a lot of people fall into this. I became a victim of my own success to a lot of degrees, where I woke up one day 20 some years ago. I was in Minneapolis in a motel. I remember it like it was yesterday. I looked in the mirror and I said, I never thought as a little boy I would be this financially successful, but I'm literally the most unhappy I've ever been in I was happier mowing yards in Ohio, building my team and building something. And I wanted that feeling back. And so to my mother's dismay at the time, I told her that I'm going to give him my 2 weeks and I'm going to go buy a business. And this was a long time ago, before there was ETA or searchers or anything like that. Back then, they just called you crazy. And I bought a little business in Lansing, Michigan, me and another guy who was the best man in my wedding. And we bought this little business that had 5 employees, and I had hair when we did that, I think. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of sleepless nights, but we turned that into, we grew that and expanded it from one location into 34 states across the country. We franchised that business, and then we sold it to a private equity firm, bought it. And that really was the start of something where I took those dollars and then I said, I'm going to do this a few more times. So we bought 3 other businesses, exited those. And then there was this young kid who's my partner now, who worked for me, who was, he's just better looking, smarter, and a lot younger than me, and wanted to approach me and said, look, I think you're onto something. I want to do what you're doing. And he came in and really helped me institutionalize our process and think through it, how we're going to grow it and scale it. And so his name's Adam Office, and Adam joined about 10 years ago. And then we have Aaron, who joined us about 5, who just brings a little more financial acumen than Adam and I have, and helps with our portfolio companies and helps us in due diligence. And so today, I believe we've got a dozen or so portfolio companies. We're actively helping them do M&A and looking for new platform acquisitions. So I live in Charlotte with 4 kids, a gigantic dog, and a great wife. So that's me.
That's amazing. With that with Yeah, that's incredible. With that first business, you said you expanded from 1 location to 34. Was that all organic growth, or did you raise money for that, or how were you able to, grow the business like that?
No, it's a great story, and a great question. It was really small when we originally bought it, and we did not make any acquisitions. It was all organic. We was a home services business, and no one in that space had franchise at the time in that space. It was in environmental services. We became the world's largest radon gas mitigation company, and we started growing kind of de novo through locations that we knew we could get business in, and we'd send someone there to live, and we'd give them the business, and we'd grow it. And then we had an interesting model. So we would get an area up and running, and then we'd find a professional, someone that probably wasn't involved in that business before, but someone that we knew could lead and grow something. And we would get them to come in and take it over from us and buy the franchise model. And then we had company owned locations as well that we continued to grow. So that business grew from like very humble, small beginnings. And we built our own software platform for franchisees to use. So we would put a lot of the money back into the business on the early days, and then that helped us scale. And then we were fortunate enough to have a great exit.
That's incredible. That's amazing. That's so Yeah, completely organically that's incredible, just for some context to, expand like that. Yeah, can you kinda share some insights? Like, I wanna get into what you're doing now, but I think that's such a fascinating story. Like, as a newer entrepreneur, you said that you had started a business from day 1, so you're kind of an entrepreneur from day 1, but walk me through, you know, taking on that first smaller business in humble beginnings and then really scaling to, you said it was the largest, don't quote me, it was the largest in the entire world in your sector?
Yeah, we did. Our primary business was radon mitigation system. So uh, particularly in the Northeast and the mountain regions, if you sell a house, you'd have to get it tested for radon, and many homes test high. We'd come in and resolve that situation so the real estate transaction could take place. That led into some commercial work with vapor intrusion and some other more advanced jobs with soil treatments and things like that, but more commercial oriented jobs. Um, but what happened is a gentleman who I'd met, this young kid, came to me and said, "Look, I think there's a business here. I know this guy that owns this. He's retired. He kind of got into this to get out of the house a little bit during retirement, and it has blown up, and he doesn't know what to do with it." And he used him as his vendor and said, "Look, I think if we were to buy this company, we could really take it to the next level." So it's probably one of the best deals I've ever done. It was in a big boy restaurant in Michigan. We met the seller, and back then he had a flip phone, and the phone just kept vibrating on the table, and he would be like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with all these calls coming in. I just did this as a hobby to like get out of my house a little bit in retirement." And I was like, "Oh man, I want that phone number really bad." And so we did the deal right there in an in a big boy restaurant in Okemos, Michigan. And so we bought that business, and that young partner that I had known took it over, and he quickly got it from where it was doing a few hundred. It was like a few $100,000 a year in business that this guy couldn't even handle. And within, I think it was a year and a half, we were doing 6 million, and he calls me up and out of the blue, and he's like, we got a tiger by the tail, and I need your help. So that's when I came on full time to help him lead that, and quickly figured out as we grew, we needed people waking up in those geographies that had ownership in it, that had, when their feet hit the floor, they cared about it as much as we did, that to manage the growth in each market. And so that's when we started franchising along with our corporate owned locations. And then it really took off and we had a lot of interest. It was a niche business. There wasn't a lot of people in it. And we started doing really well on the marketing side, and we had a giant call center that would take calls, and we built a software program to help quote and bid and manage each job, to give us a little bit of clarity with some KPIs around what each technician was doing every day. There was just nothing off the shelf for an industry like that we had to build it ourselves. And then that added a lot of value as we invested in that. When people started coming to look at us, they were really impressed with the operation, and the transaction happened. So it was a great success story with a lot of hard work.
Man, how'd you even, I guess, get into learning about buying a business and deciding to go that route versus bootstrapping one completely from the ground up? How were you introduced to that?
So look, I've always been, as a little boy, very curious, and I think you always want what you don't have. And for me, that was money. And growing up super poor, and you start mowing yards of people that you're like, who lives in this house? Like, what do these people do? And I just spoke to a group of college kids yesterday, and I emphasized the fact that you have to be really curious. And I was always never afraid to go up and we're like, look, I don't know how you got this, but I want this someday. Like, what do you do? And a disproportionate amount of them own their own business. And so from a young age, I can remember sitting in the back seat of cars driving somewhere as a little boy, just looking at every business going by and like, what do they do? Like, how did this guy get into that? How did this person build this business? So I've always been really, really curious about it. And um, when I almost got into it from necessity, right? Like as a young kid, Wendy's isn't going to hire me when I'm 11 to come work there. So I couldn't get a job. I was too young. And so I literally, back then I had a boom box, and I asked for blank cassette tapes when I was 11 years old. And I would put the cassette tape in and I would say, hi, Mrs. Jones, this is Kevin Ramsier. You know my mom. I live down on the corner of this street. I'm trying to be the first kid in my family to go to college. And if you'd let me mow your yard, that would mean a lot. I know you have a mower. I don't, but I'll mow it for $15 and you'd be helping me out a lot. And I'd deliver these cassette tapes all over my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. And, oops, sorry. And my phone just started ringing, and that's originally how I got business and build it out. So it was the sympathy plea, the sympathy sale, they call it.
That's so cool. And then from there, you build up that business, you exit it. Then we transition into Sier Capital. Can you kind of go through the decision-making process there? Why not go in and, build another business, or can you kind of go into the decision-making process that you had there?
Yeah, no one's asked me that before. It's a good question. So I created this entity called Sier Capital Partners because it's the last four letters of my last name, and zero people ever pronounce it right. So it's always
Sorry.
like, no, that's fine. I'm so used to it. Um, I usually get like Ramsier, like French. Um, but I called it that, and that was what I bought the original business under, never thinking that I was gonna own multiple businesses. It was like, I'm gonna buy something, grow it, sell it, go do it again. And so in the early days, I got married, and we've lived in 9 different states. So I used to buy a business and I would move there for 12 to 18 months to build. I have this system of following a dollar through the business of like every a dollar comes in, how much did we spend on marketing, on sales? Why are we spending this much on PVC pipe or whatever it is? Like, should we bid this out? How can I turn that 12 cents that we make on every dollar into 22 cents? And I'm obsessed with that, like fanatical about it. And a lot of that comes from the curiosity that I stood. They used to call me the chief of 1,000 questions. Every day I would come in, I'm like, why do we do it this way? How are we bidding this out? Like, w- let me listen in on your call. Why did you say that? Or why aren't you asking this? Or we should be doing this. And, one of my favorite questions when I first buy a business now is everyone wants to go into the guy that runs the business, but I start at the other end. I start with people loading the trucks, and my favorite question is, "What do we do here that's dumb? Tell me that." And they have the best ideas to implement in the business than people sitting in the office all day. And I listen to them, and then you start making those changes, and you all of a sudden you say, "Hey, Joe said that we should do X, Y, and Z, and that's what we're gonna start doing." And everybody's like, "Wow." They start getting recognized for their ideas that they never have, and it can change a culture really, really quick where this is almost like an ownership culture of people getting up in the morning and understanding that someone cares. I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, but, um, what happened was, I would move all the time. Well, my oldest daughter has lived in 9 states, and then I would build out the management team. I'd feel comfortable with the processes and the KPIs that I wanted to see and the direction and the strategy that the overall business was heading. And then I'd go buy another one and I'd move. So we'd pick up and I'd say, I just bought a new one in a completely different industry and we're going to go do it. So I felt like I had to be there to implement my system. And then when I met Adam, he's like, what you're doing, we can't scale that. We have to take what you know and try to put it into these businesses that we buy and then give them autonomy to to um to build out the business. And so he changed really my mindset on that. And it was nerve-wracking at first because I like to be very hands-on and like to figure out the sales process and how do we get a customer and what does that mean and how do we bear hug that customer when we get them, how do we treat them like royalty and then ask for more business after that. And that's how I've grown all of these. So teaching that is very difficult at sometimes, but we've been able to do it and do it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, jeez. So you mentioned you got married young, and
No, I wasn't young. My wife's like 8 years younger than me, but she was. I waited a while, but that was I think 20 some years ago when we got married.
wow. And in the midst of that, you're moving state to state to state to state to state to state to do these. Um, w- Now this is something that most people kind of. I don't think neglect's the right word, but I know a lot of people probably ask you about the operational side of the business and the leadership side of the business, but when it comes to that, I guess rock at home, that relationship at home, like, well, how is to have a wife who's willing to travel from state to state like that? That must mean the world to you, no? Like that must be.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It doesn't get enough attention. And in fact, someone told me this a long time ago is like, the most important decision that you're going to make is who's going to be your partner. And this person said to me, he goes, you either want a very supportive spouse or no spouse at all. And so it was our fifth date with my wife, I think. And she just randomly said, do you think you'll ever get married? And I remember, so we just had this conversation last week. She was telling some people that we met that had just got engaged. And she goes, "Do you think you'll ever get married?" And I go, "I want to be, but I probably won't." I go, "I want kids. I just don't know if a wife's gonna put up with what I'm about to do." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm about to go on a journey, and I just don't want to be on my deathbed and or have any regrets. So if I should have done this, I wish I would have done this, and that's what I'm about to do. And I don't know what that's going to entail, but there's going to be days it when I look in the mirror and it's like, man, this sure sounded a lot better when I was thinking about it than it does today. And that means it's going to be you that's suffering as well. And there were some really dark days early on of when we were building stuff. And then when we bought something and it didn't work out like I thought it would initially. Um, I remember one day I was brushing my teeth and we were going through the ringer on one specific business. And I was just brushing my teeth standing there in my like boxer shorts and brushing my teeth, getting ready for the day. It's like 4:35 in the morning and she hears me getting up and she just walks by me and hits me on the butt. And she said, "Go get him today, big boy. I'm counting on you." And I was just like, whoa, like that just set the tone of like, I got to make this work. I got to make this happen. She believes in me. And, we have 4 kids now and he's worked just as hard as I have, if not harder, at instilling hard work and work ethic and values in our children, and has just always been a rock to support me. And I think that's super important if you're going to go out and do this, is you got to have someone that understands you're about to take the biggest risk of your life. And there's going to be days where it is very, very rough, days, weeks, and months, and maybe quarters and years potentially. But if you believe in yourself and you believe in the vision and you believe in what you're building, you need someone that believes in that as much as you do.
I DJ and I are been on the younger side. Neither of us married quite yet. I guess, especially when it comes to because we're looking at it from the business, I guess, lens too, and the life partner lens, if you will. I guess for you, um, obviously knowing that she's supportive in whatever it is that you're willing to take on, how do you know that the decision? How do you get to the point to where you pull the trigger on that decision? Because that's one of those, not one of those that's like those like spinning doors.
Yeah. No, you mean to pull the trigger to get married? You mean like to go all in on a commitment like that? Um, well, I had girlfriends prior to meeting my wife, and I knew that it was going to take a special person. And that's a tough answer to hear from a question of like, I wouldn't get married because I don't want to put someone through what I'm about to go through. I don't know. I'm about ready to walk into the abyss and I have no idea what the other side looks like. And I wouldn't want someone on that journey. I'm tough enough to handle it. And she was like, so am I. That's what I want to do. And quite frankly, I think it helped that we both grew up with not a lot. So we were both used to not having much. And then when it started happening, we both got to experience all of those things for the first time together. And I think both sides of that journey brought us so much closer. And man, I'm going to get emotional because we have seen some. I got introduced to present to a bunch of college kids once, and they introduce you like you just built SpaceX or something, like they introduce you in a way that you're like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or something. And I changed my whole presentation, and it was like, it just hit me. I'm like, look, if you ever want to be introduced like that, which I'm sure all of you in this room will, and hopefully better than that, you've got to be willing. You don't know what it takes to have an introduction like that. It is brutal. And I'm telling you, if you want to go start something on your own or go buy something and build it and grow it, too many people talk about all the positives, the freedom and everything else that you have. But I would tell you to keep your job. If you have a good job, I wouldn't want to see someone go through what I went through to get what I got. Like it, in some ways, it takes a lot of you personally. I've missed so much stuff with my kids that I'll never get back just because I am, I'm never giving up. My greatest strength is I will hang on longer than anyone else. And I just will never stop. And because I want to build a legacy for my great grandchildren someday. And someone has to do that to break a lineage of pain.
That's powerful. I know we can get back into the tactical side in a second, but I would love
We're
just some
getting deep.
tactical.
We're getting
No,
deep.
this is incredible, and I would love
This is
some.
what we want.
Yeah, this is. I would love some. I don't know if you can give any tips on this, but like I think it's something I struggle with as like a younger entrepreneur. Is just managing my relationships because I have a similar obsession to you, and I'm gonna wake up every day and I'm gonna sit at the desk until I can no longer look at it. And sometimes I struggle with like I even have a girlfriend and communication there, and even my parents and friends and just those relationships where at the end of the day what's on my mind when I wake up is business, and I'm gonna be focusing on that like the majority of the time. And I think, yeah, I really struggle sometimes to manage those relationships, and even though those are the most important things, like you said, in certain cases, it's almost like, the sacrifices you have to make are in a way not even worth it. But yeah, I would love some like just tips on, obviously you've been able to, nurture this relationship long term throughout all of the things you've been through in the many years that you've been building businesses. Do you have any like tactical tips on just, being there for your kids, being there for your wife, and letting them know you care?
No, thanks for that. That's a good question. I would say this in general. Um, I think there's someone in everyone's life that's on this call or listening to this or that you run into in the street. Everyone has There's someone in your life that you need to today have a hard conversation with. And the problem is we all avoid having those hard conversations. Whether it's a manager, whether it's someone, a CEO of one of our businesses, whether it's a salesperson, whether it's a spouse, a girlfriend, a friend, a colleague, someone in your life you have been holding back. You need to have a tough conversation because things aren't going the right way. And expectations weren't set properly initially. Whatever the case is, today is the day you need to have a hard conversation. And I really have been able to think through that. And every day, to this day, there's two things I write down. I want to call 5 prospects today of someone that owns a business that I love that I want to buy. I'm just going to call them. I'm going to have the hard conversation with this person today about X, whatever it is. And I have learned that problems never age well. And if you let the hard conversations go, they don't get better. They don't get better with time. They get worse. And eventually you have a wall. You're building up all these little bricks with someone, and then there's a wall between you two, especially with a spouse or a business partner. Um, and you never want that to happen. So nip those things in the bud and have some humility. I think it's never about what you say. It's always about how you say it. Like you can tell someone to go screw themselves in a very professional and nice way, right? And that can make the difference between that relationship sticking or not. And so th- th- I always say this, there's 3 sides to every story. When you have to have those hard conversations, there's 3 sides to every story. There's your side, there's their side, and then there's the truth. And you have to have enough humility to meet someone halfway in the middle, whether it's in a negotiation to try to buy something, whether you're having a conversation with a manager or a review with a troubled employee. Having those hard conversations has made all the difference in my life. It really has. It reduces your stress. There's nothing like walking out of a meeting where you just not had it out, but you said what you feel. People never say what they feel. And I start a lot of conversations that way. I always say this, look, I've been wrong a lot and I could be wrong here, but here's how I feel this is going. Boom, boom, boom. Am I wrong or right? And most times people will say, you know what? You're right. I've been slacking or I haven't done this correctly, but here's what I need from you. And then there's something that I didn't do as well. Right. So it's a really good learning experience. So I guess my point is don't shy away from the difficult, hard conversations that need to have with people.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. I like that last line that you just said, like prefacing, you can just say, even if you know that potentially you're wrong or you're coming from a different perspective, as long as you're just like, hey, I don't know if I'm right, but here's how I feel. I think that's a really good line to be able to open up about. Just like, hey, I'm feeling this way. I don't know whether it's factually correct or X, Y, and Z, but here's how I feel. I really like that. And it almost sounds like, in relationships that are more personal and outside of business, it's kind of like setting expectations like you would with a client or anything in that way. It's like if you're able to just set those expectations up front, then, there's less miscommunication on their end where if, you are working late or you're doing whatever it is, they kind of already know that and they, you can kind of lead them back to those expectations you set and have less friction. That was wonderful. Very helpful.
Thanks.
That is huge. When I have a feeling that the hard conversations is what you've built, everything you've built around. And then when you mentioned earlier, when you were saying that you're gonna hold on and not give up to the level that others just won't even really understand. Is that where violently aligned comes from?
Well, I think, uh, how do I put this? Resilience in someone is really tough to measure. Who's got and a spouse and a partner. I always say this. The one thing I can promise is it's going to be tough. There's going to be days where this isn't working and it's going to be ugly. How we succeed is getting through those days. Just like a marriage, a business relationship, whatever it is. When times get tough, we don't walk away. We have to. Here's our vision of what our outcome is. We are going to get there. Success isn't linear. There's going to be very dark days, and we've got to sit down with one another, hug it out, and talk it out, and make sure that this works. And so we just can never quit on each other. We can never do that. We can readjust, we can reassess, we can reset, we can refocus, we can re-strategize, but we can never ever quit. That is not in our language. We don't even talk about that, because here's the outcome we're going to get if we can get through those days together. So I think like setting those expectations up front can weed out a lot of people. Like, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to, stronger is the steel that takes the fire, and we're going to take some fire. I can promise you that, but we're going to be stronger together for it.
That's incredible. I feel like hearing you talk, like I can tell that you're a very just inspiring leader. I could imagine, you're able to light some fires under some people's asses that you work with and that you're partners with, and inspire them. I was reading a book. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's called How to Make a Few $1 Billion. And it's a lot about M&A and Brad Jacobs' strategy. And he talks about electric meetings in the book. And some of the things that he talks about is just having a culture where it's okay for a bunch of really smart people to get in the room and disagree. And he's like, it's always got to be respectful, but it sounds like you kind of instill still a similar culture where it's like, hey, we're here to get this end outcome. There's going to be a lot of hard shit that happens in between. And, we can all be candid with each other and just open with each other and disagree and be okay having these tough conversations. How do you feel that that's impacted your ability to grow businesses and hire the best talent? And, just from a tactical perspective, that whole cultural thing, how important is that?
Well, I think that goes with a broader theme of, like common to me, having a tough conversation and being open and honest with someone and not hiding something is, common sense.
Right.
And uh, common sense, I think, is very uncommon, especially in business. Here's a great example. We had a construction company that did a lot of commercial work, and they were having trouble hiring. They couldn't keep drywallers for whatever reason. We're trying to hire 40 drywallers, and they'd get people in there, then they would leave, or they wouldn't work out, or they didn't know how to do the job. And I happened to be there for like a board meeting or something. And then I was like, did we ever hire any drywallers? We're like, actually, we have interviews for them today. I don't know anything about, you do not want me drywalling a house. I wouldn't know what to do with it. Right. And so I said, give me the questions that you're asking when I'm looking. And I'm like, these are like standard interview questions. It's not common sense. You're just trying to be like everybody else. Well, what are we trying to find? We're trying to find someone that's really proficient at this. And so I go, can I sit in on one of the interviews? And we're in this super nice office. And I'm sitting there, I'm leaning back and listening to them ask the questions. And they weren't making connection with the person. I could tell the guy had like 20 years of experience, and I wanted him. They were like trying to act like they knew more than this guy. And I could tell right away this guy was really good. And I said, excuse me, do you have your tools with you? And he's like, yeah, they're in my truck out in the parking lot. And I just leaned back and I kicked a giant hole in our wall in our office. Right. And I go, come in and show us how you fix this. And everybody was like, just sat there with their eyes open. And the guy came in and fixed it. And I had our head drywall guy come in. He's like, that's pretty good. He did really good there. I'm like, and now they just kick a hole in the wall in the same room every time they're doing drywall. But to me, that's like, how do you find someone that knows what they're doing? You like make them do it. Let's watch and see if they can actually do it in a pressure cooker situation. Um, so, but those types of things, those common sense to me of like business. To me, like there's so many other things, like giving your management team equity in the business. I've had so many professional people say, you know how much you leave on the table doing that? I'm like, there would be no table if I didn't do that. I wouldn't have the table I had if I didn't do that. So when they wake up, they're not my employee anymore. They're my partner. And I can talk to them like a partner. And I can say, here's what we got to do. Tell me I'm wrong. And it's a different level of conversation. Now they are vested in this thing. And once we do have an exit, they're going to have a windfall that's going to be super important for their family and their family's legacy. And I want that violent, alignment. I want them to be in it with me. They have the same fears and the same fire in their belly as I do every morning. And there's thousands of things like that. And people, if you just look at situations, where's the common sense missing in this? What are we not doing here? What are we doing here that doesn't make much sense? This is ridiculous. Why are we doing it this way? So I just think organizational change and growth, you constantly have to be asking those types of questions because you have to evolve. A business doing 10 million in revenue has much different needs than one doing 50. And you go from 10 to 50, all of a sudden, total things change. You might need new people. You definitely need new systems and technology and processes. But, how do you, the hardest thing to do in business and in life is changing adult behavior. It's very difficult. So how do you change adult behavior to get them? I know we've done it this way for 10 years and it's worked, but we're a $20 million business. We need to act like we're a $200 million business because that's where we're going. And $200 million businesses don't have their sister doing accounting on QuickBooks. We're building an ERP system. We're going to act like this because that's where we're going. And I'm investing in this and it's going to work. We're going to make this work. There'll be challenges with it and it's going to help us eventually. It might be clunky at first and it's a whole new learning curve, but this is what we're doing this quarter. Every 90 days, we kind of institute some pretty big changes in a business so that we can grow and go through the growing pains.
The way that you compared the 20 million to the 200 million or the 2 million to the 20 million, I guess and it honestly seems like finding the common sense fires you up. What are the most nonsensical common sense things that you come across at each stage if you were to graduate? Because if someone's listening that is at the 2 million, the first million to 2 million, the 2 million to the 10 to 10 to 20, the 20 to, you've gotten experience in every single one of these. What are those blind spots that just don't necessarily make sense that from a third party point of view, you're like, just try this?
Yeah, I would say you need to print off a very detailed P&L is what I do when I come into a business. I print off not the consolidated one. I mean, we spent at ABC Plastics. We bought this from them. That's our vendor. And here's all of every line and every single section of that, sales, marketing, COGS, whatever it is. We're getting super curious. And there's 50 questions on each line. What does a $100 million business buy this way from their vendors? No. How can we reinvent our buying process? How do we bid this out? Whatever it is. What are our hiring policies? Is this how a company that is where we want to go to doing this? No, we cannot grow if we're doing it this way. And so convincing people that this is the best way, we're going to try it. It's going to be painful. We never quit. We never give up. We're going to get there. We might have to re-strategize and reset and come back and start over, but we're going to figure this out each line. And that's why it takes 18 months. Like that's why I would stay there for a year to 18 months in every business I would go to, because it is 18 to 20 hours a day of just doing those things and making sure that this thing's ready for growth. All the while you're creating a sales process that the business probably has never had that is super aggressive. We're going to go out and we're going to dominate this place. We are going to win more business than anyone else in our market. And that's how we're going to win. We are in a competition. People want our customers. We are going to treat these people unbelievable. We are going to go win more business than our competition. And when it comes, we have to be able to handle it. And we're not going to be able to handle it the way we're doing things right now. So selling them on the vision, you know what else helps? Success breeds success. So now I can point to, hey, call Eric over at this company, how we did it here. We bought the business from him. He rolled 10%. We own 90. His 10% is now worth more than the first check I gave him, right? Ask him how this works. He'll tell you he fought me tooth and nail for a year, but now it's worth 3 times of the original check I gave him. And he sees it. And we have a lot of stories like that we can tell sellers that we're talking to. They're like, why would I want to roll 15% of this equity into this deal? I'm like, because I want you, because you're good. And I want you on the board with us. I want you to advise us, and I want you to help us and talk to these half a dozen people where we've done it before. And they will tell you it's the best decision that they've made. So having third party testimonials like that aren't us, that are people that were just like them, that started 35 years ago with a ladder in the back of a truck and never thought they'd be cash flowing $4 million a year. And now they're doing a lot more than that. Like that's the best way to sell, is having someone else do it for you.
That's incredible. I'd love to get super, super tactical here, because it sounds like part of your growth strategy is obviously M&A. So you, like you said, you're doing add-ons to these businesses you're buying, but then it also sounds like you're a monster at organic growth and direct sales and, acquiring customers. So how do you think about that, like from an organic perspective? And then when are you looking to bolt on another business? What makes sense to you there, to do M&A style growth?
This is a little fluid, but I would say in general, a business we buy, we become obsessed for the first year and a half on organic before we even pull the trigger on M&A. And then look, serendipity happens in all of these businesses. We are doing things in most of our businesses now that I never thought when I first bought it we'd be doing. A door opens and you're like, wait, how much we're spending this much money on this vendor? And now they're like, that vendor is 78 years old. And if we could buy that, like we could take that out of our, you can vertically integrate some of this. So it's almost like the matrix. Things start slowing down in, 6, 12, 18 months, and you can see the bullets. And you're like, if we did this and we added this on, but um, I'm big on having selling CEOs that get out there and close business. And people don't realize this, but like one out of every 9 jobs in the US involves selling something. It's in sale. But how many universities can you go major in professional selling? Like, why don't more people teach it? You're starting to see more of it. I think actually the University of Akron has a professional selling major, and they got like 100% job placement. People want people that have trained for 4 years on how to close big ticket items. Like that is a huge quality. And so we are pretty adamant about sales. Again, this is common sense to me, but I've always thought that there's only 3 ways to grow a business. And if there's others, like I've asked this 1,000 times, no one's been able to tell me a fourth. There's only 3 ways you grow a business. You have to sell more to your existing clients, something else or more of what you're already selling. How do you go do that? You need a whole strategy around how do we get more from our existing? We got these great relationships. What else can we do for them that they would pay money for, that would add value to our relationship with them? That's first. Second is obviously you got to go find new people that need whatever you do. And the third one is you buy them. You go out and you buy clients. You buy a competitor that has the clients you want. And then you overservice them with a model that is elite. And so those 3 ways we focus on the first one first. That's our first initiative. What else can we sell to these people? How do we go out and find new people that raise their hand and say, this is interesting? To me, that's marketing. Marketing gets someone to say, raise their eyebrows a little bit. Like, I'd like to hear more about that. How do you get people to raise their hand to say, okay, you got me. Tell me a little more. That's our marketing budget. Now our salespeople come in. Sales is building a relationship with those people that raise their hand or raise their eyebrow. And, that sounds interesting. How do you build long-lasting relationships with those people? And so that is business. And so many people don't spend enough time on marketing and sales, or they under budget for it, or they poo-poo it. And it's the most important. Without that, nothing else matters. If you don't have a customer, nothing else really matters.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'd love to pick your brain a bit more on. So you have like obviously lead generation, which is going and finding new people to sell to, but then you're also reselling to the customers you've already bought to increase LTV. Like that's we come from a marketing background, so like the number one metric we're looking at is like CAC to LTV ratio. So what are we paying to acquire a customer, and how much is that customer worth? So give me some tactical strategies on how to increase LTV. Like if you come into a new business, and you're like, okay, this is our core product. How are you thinking through? I'm sure it's different with every single business, but if you could give some kind of principles, how are you thinking through increasing LTV and cross-selling and upselling? What does that process look like?
Well, I can give you examples and strategies from businesses like, the radon company is a great example that 80% of our business was from real estate transactions, real estate professionals. So how do we get every real estate professional to do business with us in the country? How do we do that? So what's important to them? Well, the problem with most of our competitors was their time to install the radon system in a real estate transaction. And the reason that's a problem is because they can't sell the house until that's done. They can't get their commission. And so we went out on a limb and we said, look, if we don't install this within 48 hours of you book an appointment, it's free. And everyone said we're crazy, or that we're just nuts. We gave away probably 30 free radon systems. I'll tell you, that was the best thing we ever did. They would go into all the other 50 agents in their office, like, these guys actually did it. We didn't pay for it. It took them 3 days and they guaranteed 48 hours. And our phone just like, it's things like that, how do you meet the needs of what these people want to do? And can we do it? Can we pull it off? And, over years and years and years, you give away 30 systems to get hundreds of thousands of them. Like, I would make that bet every day. But there's hundreds of little examples like that. It's like really understanding what's important to the customer and what the competitors are missing, what's the blind spot, and fixing that and making that your hook. Like, that is what we're going to do. We're going to be quick. We're going to be affordable, and we're going to be the nicest people you've ever dealt with. We're going to bear hug you. And little simple things like that again I think is common sense, but
That's
people don't.
yeah, that's genius. I can think through like you said, that's your hook. So it's like every single channel you could go after, whether you're cold calling somebody, you're pushing it on a Facebook ad or a cold email, or however you guys. I'm also curious at what channels you're looking at to go find new customers, like on the cold side. But like you said, that's such a great hook that anyone would be, especially if you have case studies of people where you actually gave away the free thing and they're like, holy crap, they actually lived up to their word. Almost anyone's gonna, take that. So that's,
It's like
yeah,
the Domino's, the to your door in 30 minutes or less, so the pizza's free.
Yeah. Yeah. It's stuff like that and there's other things that we tried that didn't work, and you don't do them anymore. But you measure all of this stuff, right? You guys are in marketing. You try 3 things, and boy, A is sucks. We're never doing it. B's working pretty good, but C is crushing it. Put all these resources on C and let's go all in on it, right? Until it doesn't work.
What's so interesting is, we were taking a look at your site and everything, and we saw that you guys are, um, you bought a piece of the Grand Rapids Gold, uh, and that's not many people think of the business side of sports. I guess how do you go in and implement these principles, these common sense principles, these hard conversations, these finding more ways to deliver value to the customers? How do you go about doing that within I guess, the arena of
Yeah.
sports?
Well, in full transparency, that is, I think, the only business where we're not majority in. We had a friend that was involved in the ownership group, and reached out and said, look, you want to, and I've always to this friend of like, someday I want to own a football, like a professional team. That's what I'm going to do someday. Like, that's what I want to do. He's like, well, you can own, this is a good start. You can be a minority investor in this. We're raising capital for it. And so we invested in it. So we don't have a lot of say in how but I could take a page from their playbook. I'd go to some of the games and they do an excellent job of delivering I've been to their home games and I've been to watch them at away when I'm in town somewhere and I can see they're playing. I'll go watch them. And compared to when you're at home versus on their away games, they have to be one of the best in the league at a fan experience. So I probably should pick their brain a little more because they're doing something right that you could apply to other businesses. And it is amazing how transferable these things are from industry to industry to industry, of like what works here can also work in a completely different random business that you don't think it would work because no one's doing that there. And the end consumer has never seen a strategy like that or an approach like that.
How important do you feel like that pattern recognition is? Because like now, obviously, you're in multiple industries. You've acquired, businesses like you bootstrap companies. You've acquired different businesses. You own a piece of a sports team. You own multiple companies. How important has that been? Has that helped overall, and just seeing into different industries and the strategies, and then taking something from here and applying it over there?
Yeah, that has been really important actually. But it is, again, it comes down to getting the team that's in there to believe in it, that they think you're crazy at first. They're like, nobody does this here. Like, we've never done it this way. No other competitors do what you're suggesting. It probably won't work. I'm like, look, it probably won't, but we're going to take 5 people and we're going to test it in 4 markets and we're going to try it. And if it does, we're going to go into 10 markets and then we're going to take it to our whole business and we're going to change the way we do something. Um, I really believe this is that everyone thinks they need to be morbidly compliant about the way we've always done things, and that's not how you can grow. Is obviously you want to be ethical, you got to be moral, and you got to do things legal, but you have to challenge the status quo. If you want to grow quickly, you've got to do things different than everyone else because differences sell, similarities don't. And the sooner that you can get people to see that and learn it, how do we be different? How do we stand out in a very crowded place? Because that's what you got to get noticed.
That's incredible advice. Yeah, as a marketer, that's like the entire thing. It's like differentiation. How can you position yourself against whoever you're competing with and get attention and get people to, like you said, poke their eyebrows up and be like, hey, I'm interested in that. That's fantastic. This has been a masterclass. Are there any other like it sounds like you come from a background of I'm assuming when you were bootstrapping companies, you were very involved in the sales process. It sounds like now every company that you acquire, you come in and you're looking in there. Do you have any like one-to-one sales um just frameworks or tips or just things you've learned over the years for closing those big deals?
Knowing the outcome that you want in that meeting or whatever it is people wing it, and you cannot wing it. You have Here's an ideal outcome of this meeting that I want. And what I have always done is say that to the customer. At the end of this, I'm going to ask you to make a commitment to us. And I'm going to show you why it makes sense and how we're going to save you money and why it's, I let them know, I want them to know we're going to, and I always say, is that fair? And you get them like, people will be like, yeah, that's fair. I've had 1 out of 20 people say, wait, hold on. But most people are like, that's fair. If I can show you how to save money, be more efficient, save your time, blah, blah, I'm going to ask you to make a commitment. And like, that is the close. You get someone to say yes before I even went into what we do and how we do it. I know we're the best. I've already got that figured out. I know we're going to add value to them. And I know we deserve to win the business. And I would say setting it up that way at first, like asking for a commitment before you go into what you do is really important for big ticket items. But you also have to have the conviction that you can't pull the wool over people's eyes. You have to be the best. Whatever you say, you have to undersell that and over deliver it. And that's why I constantly tell everyone we're bear hugging these. We're going to give these people a giant hug? And how do we make people, how do you make someone feel great after you leave their house, like fixing something in their house or building a greenhouse for them or whatever business we own? How do you make someone feel like that wasn't just a transaction? That was not transactional. It was transformational for me. Anyone that needs this, I need to tell people about it. How do you get people to feel that way? And that's operational. That has nothing to do, you got to sell them. You got to make them say yes to want to do business with you. But then you have to deliver. And that is where the magic happens, is in actually delivering something that adds value and gets people to feel like you cared and that they got a good value.
That's killer. That like you said, framing the whole conversation in the way that in such a direct way, and it's like, "Hey, if we can make this make sense for you," I love that. Yeah, that's incredible. And then, like, another thing, it from what it sounds like to me, it's really just like a transference of energy. It's like if your salespeople have conviction in the product because they know it's the best product and they know that it's truly gonna change this person's life, whatever they're saying is not as important as how that, like, it's almost like how they're saying it. It's the energy transference of like, "Hey, this is the best product. It's gonna do what we're saying it's gonna do." And then, that's what converts people.
Yeah. I'll also add this is I don't think people work hard enough in sales. Like, it is hard. And if you want to be number one in your profession, it doesn't just happen. It is, I equate this to football. Like, I played football in college, and anyone that plays football, any sport really, I figured this out one time in like my junior or senior year in college that I played on offense. So I only played half the game. I wasn't on defense. It's a 60-minute game. I'm playing 30 minutes. There's 10 games in a season. I'm really playing, you do the math, it's 5 hours I'm on the field playing. In a full season, I'm playing for 5 hours.
Wow.
To do that though, I put in 800, 900 hours of work, spring ball, training, watching film. You put in all this time on the back end to get noticed for 5 hours. Like, nobody practices this stuff. You have to be if you want something, you have to be obsessed with it. And that's when transformation happens. Like, you got to put in the work and the reps, and you have to be willing to be embarrassed 1,000 times before you figure, well, that doesn't work. I get a feeling that I should do something differently. But that comes with reps. And if you're calling on 30 people a day and you can call on 70, you should be calling on 100. Right? It's hard work. You've got to put it in, and it sales to me is still a numbers game of like, do you have the great pitch? Do you have the personality? Do you believe and have conviction in what we do because we're the best at it? And then you got to go do it over and over and over 1,000 times a week.
Man, Kevin, you absolutely dropped a master class on our time together, and we want to be respectful of the time that you've allotted for us. And we really appreciate you taking the time and imparting some wisdom on us and being an open book.
Anytime, guys. I love to talk to you more. So I appreciate you having me on as a guest. It means the world to me, and hopefully that was helpful and insightful and fun. It was fun for me. So thanks.
Kevin, where can people find you? For anybody who's watching this, maybe a business that is interesting and they're looking to sell, or anybody that, is just looking to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, siercapital.com, SIER capital.com. Our emails are on there. And if you have a business and you want to expand it and grow it and you need help doing it, we're the group. We'll take good care of you.
Wonderful. We'll put that in the description as well. So
Heck yeah.
All
So,
right, guys.
all right, guys, that's another episode of the Deal Flow Show.